I mean, if I had it my way, we'd be talking about eating disorders every single day of the week, every single day of the year. But what's so important and why this year's theme, particularly for me, really strikes a chord and what I'm passionate about is that the theme of the week is about how anyone can be affected by eating disorders and how eating disorders do not discriminate. There's quite a stereotypical view that an eating disorder is only represented by, I don't know, a young girl who wants to be thin and has anorexia, and that's just absolute rubbish. For many people, it's not even about wanting to be thin. The food is the symptom, it's not the cause. An eating disorder is a mental health illness. And when I say food is the symptom, not the cause, I mean exactly that. That might be the way that it seems to be portrayed out there to people who don't understand it. But actually, for the person going through it, it's much more than just food and it's much more than just weight and a number on the scales. And actually, bulimia and binge eating disorder represent probably the majority of eating disorders that are in the UK at the moment. And then you add on the layer of ARFID, which is avoidant restricted food intake disorder, and OSFED, which is other specified feeding and eating disorders. And I mean, the list just goes on, but it's not so much the list of the words, it's the amount of people, um, young, old, men, women, homosexual, heterosexual, different faiths, different religions, different backgrounds. Eating disorders can happen to anyone at any time. And that's why this week is so important to try and dispel that stigma, normalize the conversation, and try and promote awareness and education. Because many of the people that we speak to from a SEED's point of view often say to us, if we'd have known more about eating disorders, if we'd have been more educated, we would have been able to speak to our son, daughter, my husband, my wife. And it's shrouded in such secrecy that this is what we're trying to do. The 1 week of the year that we get a chance to do it. Yeah, I think it's about education is so key, and when it comes to eating disorders, early intervention is so key. So by that I mean that the earlier that we can spot the warning signs or get somebody help, the sooner we can bring that person back. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I always say that waiting for the weight to change won't change what's already there. And many people just assume that because somebody looks okay, they don't have an eating disorder. Whereas what we're trying to get people to understand is that it's much more than just a number on the scales, really. Yeah, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, didn't I? Yes, it's very difficult because no pun intended, but not one size fits all. It's very important that you treat the person and not the eating disorder. So you can't just categorize say, oh, well, that person does that, therefore they've got an eating disorder. It's not about that. The big things that we teach about is to look at the person. So if the more you know that person, the more you will know that they are struggling. So it's not necessarily just about meal times and weight loss or weight gain. It's about noticing if somebody, say for instance, in my case, when I was poorly, I stopped going to after school activities. I was being bullied. My dad often says that I went from this bright-eyed, bubbly girl to like a shell of my former self. Um, he also talks a lot about how the light went out in my eyes. Equally, if we are looking more at the physical telltale signs, many people who are struggling with an eating disorder will tend to wear more baggy clothes and they'll change their style because they're not confident and they're not feeling safe and okay. Obviously, there's also skipping meals and saying that they're eating elsewhere or an eating disorder is a very manipulative illness. And again, it is not a choice, it is not the person's fault, but it will try and get away with as much as it can. So people going from being inclusive and coming out and socializing to sort of saying that they're not eating with the family because they're going out for dinner with X, Y, and Z, or saying they're going to school and they're having school dinners when, they're not. It's just, it's all of these little things. But for me personally, it's more about looking out for the warning signs of that person that you know and love who is starting to change, and starting the conversation doesn't have to just be about, well, you're not eating this and you're losing weight, and I can see you doing that, and you're going to the bathroom after meals, because the more you confront and get aggressive, the more the eating disorder is going to attack back. So it's about saying, look, Jem, I can see that something's not right. What's going on for you? Like, can we have a chat about it? And just that gentle, kind approach. And that's what we at Seed promote more than anything, really, about treating the person and not just the eating disorder. Yeah, my eating disorder began at the age of 10. Unfortunately, my mum and dad very quickly got me to the doctors, but the doctor turned me away, saying I wasn't low enough in weight to have a problem. And it was probably just a phase. Cut to a year later, I was given 24 hours to live, and told that if I didn't eat or drink, I would die. And thus became the next 13 years of our lives. And that's the thing about eating disorders. I say our lives because it wasn't just about how it affected me, it was about how it affected mum and dad and my family and friends. And we very quickly realised that there was no services out there to support those affected by eating disorders. And so mum and dad, being the amazing humans and parents that they are, they decided to set up a support group, and it just snowballed from there. It's our 25th year this year. I've been in recovery now for 12 years. And ever since I got Emmerdale, and started to turn my life around, I've been shouting from the rooftops about better eating disorder support and awareness. But we're still fighting. We're still having to fight for funding. I know you came to our resource room opening back in January 2023, and we don't have that anymore because we lost funding. It's just me at Seed at the moment. So the system is still very, very much in need of a complete overhaul, and it's very, very broken. And we need to start coming together as a collaborative to work with the voluntary sector and the NHS to start making a real difference. Fortunately, I've got a meeting with West Streeting coming up soon, where hopefully we'll be able to start addressing these things. But yeah, much more needs to be done in my capacity as a CEO of an eating disorder charity, but we will get there. Um, God, I mean, I could go on for days, but I mean, you're only going to use like a minute or two of it, aren't you? To be fair. Yeah. We've been, I mean, absolutely. It's very much a postcode lottery at the moment. We at Seed have been very, very lucky that we've been supported by our integrated care board. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. And the little bit of national lottery community funding that we got, but that only sustains where we are right now. And at the moment, there's just me. We're recruiting volunteers and our trustees. So we've been closed for referrals for like 5 months. And in the meantime, CAMS and the GAPs and the NHS are referring it into us because they can't cope with the number of people that are with them. So there's some massive, massive adjustments that need to be made. And it's okay, the government saying, oh, well, we've given 1 point so and so billion to mental health and predominantly eating disorders. Yeah, it comes at the top, but that's by the time it gets down to where it actually needs to be, covering wages, covering staff, covering this crisis over here, covering that pot over there, covering that restructuring over there. There's hardly anything left when it gets to the front line, and it's not good enough. We need to be looking at the government to helping us support a more succinct referral pathway so that we're all on the same page. We're not just trying to fight fires with fire. We all absolutely have a system where we work together, but there is still so much that needs to be done to come together as a collaborative, and we can't do that without funding. So yeah, there is a major crisis, and the pandemic only created an even bigger epidemic with eating disorders and disordered eating, in my opinion.